Meat. It's central to the lives of billions of people. It's part of our history, our culture, and our traditions. But how much longer can that go on? The world is waking up to an environmental crisis. Across the planet, we consume a staggering 65 billion animals a year.
Everything in my body is saying this is wrong.
And the latest scientific research is revealing that meat production has become one of the biggest threats to our environment.
Without the Amazon forest, the life of human beings are under threat.
I'm Liz Bonin, a wildlife biologist.
Oh my God, it's looking straight at me.
I've eaten meat my whole life, but the more I learn about our planet, the more I question how we treat it.
This is as serious as it can possibly get.
On my quest to uncover the truth about meat production's impact, I'll discover some of the most disturbing examples of its effect on the environment.
It's their problem, it's my problem, it's your problem, it's a planetary problem.
I'll visit places I never imagined would be affected by meat production.
This could be the last time I actually see an African penguin with my own eyes, alive.
And I'll meet the scientists urgently trying to find solutions.
This is a living, breathing animal.
Oh, yeah.
That I'm looking straight into.
I want to know exactly how our hunger for meat is affecting the planet.
I don't think the general public has any idea about what's going on to produce the bacon they fry up for breakfast.
I'm starting my journey in the country where people eat more meat than anywhere else on Earth, the USA.
Saltgrass, steakhouse, roadhouse, steaks, ribs, steakhouse, steakhouse, steakhouse. Welcome to Texas. And look at that. Free 72-ounce steak if eaten in 1 hour. That's just mad. 2 kilograms of steak in one sitting. I mean, that just goes to show how deeply ingrained in the culture beef farming is. They even make a competition out of it.
To satisfy that hunger for beef, America produces over 10 billion kilos of it every year. And most of it comes from factory farms known as feed yards. I'm meeting the boss of the Wrangler feed yard, Paul Defour.
Might you be Paul?
Oh, Liz.
Hi. How are you doing?
Good, how are you?
This feed yard is the size of 250 football pitches and is just one of 10 that Paul oversees. Cattle are brought here from other farms across the country to be fattened up for slaughter.
So how many cows on this feedlot?
This particular feed yard's about 50,000 head.
50,000?
About 50,000. We'll have 2 sets of cattle in it throughout the course of the year, so that'll put a little over 1 million head of cattle through the combined 10 feed yards.
That is a huge number. That
It is.
makes my head swim.
Yeah.
Per year. How long do they stay in this pen?
Generally stay with us about 6 months. They're happy and like to play just like any other animal.
I have a classic view of a herbivore out in an open space, so I'm struggling a little bit to understand how you can,
Well, even if
how
they
you know
were in
they're
an
happy
open-
and content.
They like to be in groups, they like to be close, they like structure. So, yeah, how do we know they're happy? You know, we know cattle.
Intensive farming raises grave concerns about the conditions the animals are kept in, but it's how 2/3 of the world's meat is farmed. And aside from concerns about welfare, there is another big problem with all farmed cattle, including free-range cows. They produce vast amounts of a greenhouse gas that warms our planet.
So what's going on here, Paul?
It's enough of an issue that this feed yard has a research pen to monitor emissions.
So this is an experiment to study greenhouse gas emissions.
What are the sources of those emissions on a feedlot like this?
Cattle have a unique anatomy that allows them to ferment the food that they eat. And a byproduct of that fermentation is methane. That's why they're a little bit different than other species, because when they burp, it's actually a burp, throughout the day and chew their cud, as the old saying goes, that essentially results in methane production.
So they're burping methane gas.
That's right.
Methane is an extremely potent greenhouse gas, almost 30 times more powerful than carbon dioxide. Over the course of a year, the burps from a single extra cow heat the planet as much as burning around 600 litres of petrol. Giant feed yards like this produce vast amounts of methane. But by feeding the cows a diet rich in corn and chemical additives such as antibiotics instead of grass,
Corn, fat, glycerin, liquid fat.
they fatten the cattle up more quickly and reduce methane emissions per kilo of meat produced.
What you're seeing here is 60 years of progress that has allowed us to do more with less.
But by rearing cattle in this way on such a vast scale, farms like this make beef cheaper and much more available.
What motivates us is to produce food and protein and make it as accessible as possible. On average, every one of these animals will yield about 600 pounds of product. Across all 10 of our feed yards, there'll be a little over 600 million pounds of boneless red meat.
That's a lot of meat.
It is a lot of meat. There's a lot of people.
In the last 50 years, the global cattle population has increased by 400 million. There are now 1.5 billion cows on Earth. Together with all other livestock, the meat industry now produces more greenhouse gases than the running of all our transport, cars, planes, freight, and ships combined. As the number of cattle escalates, so do other livestock populations. In the last 50 years, pig numbers have doubled. And the number of chickens has increased 5-fold to more than 20 billion. It's resulted in a colossal amount of an inevitable byproduct: manure. My next stop is Duplin County in North Carolina, where pigs outnumber people 30 to 1, and manure is a serious issue.
Kemp.
Liz.
Hi, nice to meet you. How are you?
Good. Good to meet you too.
Shall I join you in your
Yeah,
car
let's
then?
go.
Kemp Burdett works for the Waterkeeper Alliance, a non-profit organization fighting against the pollution of waterways.
So we're coming up here. We're gonna go right past the hog farm.
How many pigs would you say this particular establishment has?
I would say 7,000 range here.
That doesn't seem possible.
7,000 pigs produce a lot of manure. It's flushed out of the barns into huge open-air lagoons.
That first pipe, you can see the waste kind of pouring out into
So that's just pig manure.
Right.
And what's in that manure and in that urine that concerns you the most?
There are antibiotics, there's bacteria, there's E. coli, there's Enterococcus. There are nutrients like nitrogen and phosphorus in very high amounts.
You're
And
looking
then
over your
that-
shoulder. Why are you?
Well, I heard a car. I just wanted to make sure.
Does this get dodgy sometimes?
It gets a little dodgy.
Okay, let's go.
Pig farming here is big business, and some farmers don't like attention being drawn to the way their manure is disposed of. When lagoons get too full, farmers typically spray the manure onto the land. To give me an idea of the effect this is having, we're taking to the air.
Swine is always going to have that lagoon. It'll be kind of a pink color typically.
Why is it a pink color?
It's the bacteria in the waste.
Manure makes for a good fertilizer, but too much of it can be toxic.
See how much standing water is underneath that rightmost sprayer?
Is that water contaminated?
It's very likely to have high levels of bacteria.
And that's coming from that pink lagoon there.
Exactly.
And they're just dumping it.
If all the manure can't be absorbed into the soil, it can run off into the surrounding landscape.
Down here off the right side, you can see the runoff pattern in the field.
The white branching stuff over there.
You look down to the right, kind of see that swampy area, that's a wetland. It runs right next to the spray field for that new lagoon, so
Yeah.
it's just really easy to start to see how the waste makes its way into waterways.
All I can see are barns and lagoons, barns and lagoons. I can't get over just how many there are in just this small area.
So if we did a quick count here, we could see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 39, 40, 41, 45, 46.
Stop it, Ken. I can't believe what I'm seeing. It's really when you take to the air that you get an absolute sense of the annihilation of this landscape.
Over time, the pig waste drains into river systems, bringing with it a host of chemicals and dangerous bacteria.
So what are you looking for in these samples?
We're specifically looking for E. coli bacteria.
And we've been sampling in this stream for, I guess, about 8 years now. You know, like if we go back and look at results, the maximum amount of bacteria you can have in a water body and it still be safe is 200 colonies of that bacteria, of fecal coliform, per 100 milliliters of water. We got 23,000 in this sample, 21,000 greater than 60,000. In this case, the equipment maxed out at 60,000. We don't know if it was 61,000 or 161,000, but we just know it was greater than 60,000.
And the maximum that's allowed is 200.
200. 60,000. That would basically turn this into like an open sewer. People don't know how big the problem is and how much waste these things are actually generating.
They just go to the supermarket and they buy their bacon. And we all do. We're all responsible, but we don't give it a second thought. And I tell you what, being in that plane with you today hit me like a ton of bricks.
Farmed animals around the world produce 3 billion tons of manure every year. UK meat farming is not as intensive as in America, but it's still the cause of serious pollution incidents on a weekly basis. And once manure gets into the waterways, it continues to act as a potent fertilizer. As it flows down rivers and into the sea, it fertilizes algae and can turn it into thick, toxic carpets called algal blooms that can kill wildlife. As the algae rots, it also starves the water of oxygen, creating what scientists call dead zones, where nothing survives. There are currently hundreds of damaging algal blooms and dead zones around the world's waters, caused by manure and chemical fertilizers, including in the seas around the UK. But the problems caused by manure don't have to be this severe. I'm on my way to a factory farm that's trying to do things a little differently. Tom?
Hello,
Hi, I'm Liz.
Tom Butler. Nice to see you.
Very nice to meet you, Tom
Okay.
Butler. Thank you for having me.
The farm is made up of 10 barns, holding a total of 7,000 pigs.
So when did you receive these pigs in this barn?
We've had these pigs about 2 weeks,
And they'll be here a total of
20 weeks.
20 weeks in this barn. You have a lot of land. Would you maybe like to think about making your pigs free range?
It wouldn't produce as much meat as quickly, and the corporate way is to produce as much as you can, as fast as you can, get it to market, and that's the way they make their money.
And that's the way they make their money.
Yeah.
Like many farmers around here, Tom doesn't actually own these pigs. A large corporation pays him to fatten them up and dictates how he feeds and rears them.
So feces runs through these slats.
Yeah, all the manure is kind of trampled through the cracks.
How much manure do all of your barns produce
Between 9,000 and 10,000 gallons of waste per day.
per day? That's a lot of waste.
But it's what Tom is doing with all this waste that's making a difference.
Well, immediately I can see that it's covered. It's the first covered lagoon I've seen. How many liters of manure is under that cover?
If you'll translate that to gallons, it's 6 million gallons.
6 million gallons of pig manure. Can we stand on it?
Yes. I may slide down with these leather boots on, but you can pick me up.
Don't slide. Do you want me to hold you? I'll hold
Yeah.
you if you hold me.
That's gonna
Okay,
work.
we're good, we're good. Talk me through why there's a cover on top of a lagoon.
We had some issues with community people talking about odor. Yeah, we felt like it was our responsibility to do what we could to lessen the impact. So we ended up with a covered lagoon and a lot of happy neighbors.
And I presume a cover like this also prevents breaching, overflowing. You are not allowing any of your lagoon manure to end up in the waterways because of this.
That's correct.
And there's another benefit to Tom's system. As manure breaks down, it generates methane. By covering his lagoon, Tom stops that methane from getting into the atmosphere and contributing to global warming. Instead, he harnesses it, producing biogas.
Mother Nature does all the work. She produces the methane under the cover, and we just burn it as a fuel, just like you do gasoline in your engine.
So you're using the methane as power
Yeah, just that simple.
from the
Yes.
pig manure.
Yeah. In about 3 months, we can make enough electricity to furnish the farm for the whole year, and then we sell the rest of it back to the grid.
To power how many houses would you say
About 50 is what they estimate that we can serve
a year?
a year.
That's
Yeah,
extraordinary.
I'll agree. Yes.
You'll agree.
Tom's investment is paying for itself. In Europe and other parts of the world, more farmers are starting to harness methane as an energy source. But so far around here, Tom remains one of the very few.
Why isn't everyone doing this?
That's a good question.
Do you think that this industry cares about the environment, is concerned about what they're doing?
That's the conclusion I have to come to, that they will not, are not going to change.
When I first got here this morning, I knew I was meeting a farmer who was trying to make some changes to this, intensively farming meat like this, but who ultimately was still part of the problem, and I was bracing myself for how difficult that was going to be. And now I'm coming away with the realization that he's this tiny cog in a huge wheel, this juggernaut of an industry that doesn't seem to be willing to change quickly enough, no matter what it's doing to the environment. And how do you go about fixing something like that?
As the damage caused by intensive meat farming becomes more apparent, farmers are even encroaching into a natural wonder that plays a vital role in protecting our planet. The Amazon rainforest is known as the lungs of the earth. Its trees store huge amounts of carbon, helping to keep the entire planet cool. This precious ecosystem also influences weather patterns across the globe. But Brazil, home to 60% of this rainforest, is now also home to more cattle than any other country on Earth. Over 200 million of them. It's the world's biggest exporter of beef, and it transports thousands of tons to the UK every year. As farmers seek out more land to graze their cattle, they're heading even further into the Amazon. Adriana Charu works for Greenpeace. She's fighting to save the rainforest. To show me the damage taking place, she's giving me an aerial view. Very soon, I see the impact for myself.
There's no forest here. It just looks like farmland. How much of all of this cleared land used to be rainforest? Everything was Amazon here. Cattle is the main driver of deforestation in the Amazon. When I heard about deforestation years ago, I always thought it was logging for timber. But you're telling me that Cattle grazing is the biggest driver of deforestation, not logging.
No doubt.
It's like flying over the British countryside, and we are in the middle of the Amazon. Look at all this cattle, look, cattle everywhere.
The cattle is eating the forest, literally, you know?
Much of the Amazon is unowned land. Farmers claim a patch, slash and burn it, graze their cattle on it, and then sell the land for profit. What they're doing is often illegal, but this dense forest, the size of Western Europe, is incredibly difficult to police.
How much of the Amazon has been scarred by all of this cattle ranching?
We already lost almost 20% of the Amazon. And without the Amazon forest, the life of human beings are under threat in this world.
Destroying the forest releases vast amounts of carbon back into the atmosphere, resulting in the warming of our planet. The destruction of the Amazon affects us all.
These forests are extraordinary carbon stores, carbon sinks, the very life support system of the planet, not just of Brazil, of the planet.
It's really crazy, you know, because when people are buying your piece of beef, eating your hamburger in the fast food, they really do not realize that in each piece of this hamburger there is a piece of the forest.
And for my first time flying over it to see this, makes me sick to my stomach. Ranch, cows, watering hole, ranch.
You know, I have a son, and when I was showing some pics for him, he was saying, Mama, the land is hurt. And he only 2 years and a half, and he understood already that, you know. They are stealing the future of the next generation. We are about to lose everything.
I don't want to be a silly Westerner romanticizing about the Amazon. I'm here to get the facts from you. But seeing that and understanding the scale just sets me off.
An area 3 times the size of the UK has already been cleared. And to bolster the economy, Brazil's President Jair Bolsonaro is encouraging cattle farmers to clear even more. During the summer, the equivalent of 5 football pitches were lost every single minute. The first to suffer is the wildlife. This rainforest is home to some of the world's most magnificent species, from the jaguar to the wakari monkey and the giant otter. I'm here to find one of the rainforest's aerial predators, the harpy eagle. Harpies are the most powerful eagles on the planet. They mostly prey on sloths and monkeys. As top predators, they influence the entire food web, but they're also affected by how well their prey is faring, a perfect indicator species of the health of the whole ecosystem. But as the rainforest is being cleared, their future hangs in the balance. I've joined Professor Everton Miranda, a scientist studying how cattle farming is affecting harpy eagles. He's brought me to a small patch of forest surrounded by pasture.
You do that with such ease.
Everton has found one increasingly rare harpy chick and needs to monitor its health by placing a camera in its nest. I'm heading up the tree with him, but it's only safe to climb if the chick's parents aren't home.
What happens if the parents come back?
Well, they will perch nearby. It's very unexpected that they would attack us.
And how powerful are these birds? I mean, I've read an account that their talons are as big as those of the grizzly bears. That's not true, is it?
Actually, it is. They have enormous talons. They are easily able to broken human harm. It has happened a couple times.
They can break a human arm.
Absolutely, easily.
Harpy eagles build their nests in the tallest trees, around 30 meters high.
Oh my God, that's high, Everton.
Yeah, that is.
It's very high.
Very good.
Oh my God. The female is back.
She looks relaxed.
But what if she decides she doesn't like us in her tree?
She may attack.
Oh, sweet Jesus. She knows we're here for sure. She's looking.
Yeah, she'll vocalize a bit if she's pissed off.
For now, the adult harpy seems relaxed enough for us to continue the climb. And as I get higher, I can see just why these birds are in trouble.
I see cows everywhere around this patch. When you're down there, you think you're in the middle of
the
a forest.
but it's not forest at all.
It's not forest at
It's
all.
just degraded land.
Oh my God.
You've seen it?
Yes. Oh my God.
It's big.
It's looking straight at me. Oh my God.
And mommy is calm.
Mommy's okay?
Mommy's calm.
I think it's the most beautiful thing. How old is this chick?
4 months. So 2 months more, she'd be learning how to fly.
Look at the size of her talons.
And she's just a baby.
It's almost like she's showing off with the feathers in the wind.
Being beautiful.
This chick's parents need to feed it around 2 animals every week. But many of the animals that harpy eagles hunt have been lost as the forest has been cut down.
So the prey base here is decreasing. Is this one going to survive?
Yes, because we are here to make it survive.
But Everton's research is revealing that more and more harpy chicks are failing to fledge.
So are you seeing chicks around here starving in their nests?
Yes, absolutely. We had one case where a chick was saved in her last 45 days of life with just 3 prey. The normal would be 12. And that animal started to die.
It's just bones, it's just... How old was it?
6 to 7 months old.
Just starved to death.
Started to die. Meat production did this.
This is the front line of cattle ranching.
Destroying our biodiversity, destroying our top predators.
These incredible animals that live in these magical forests. Like, it doesn't get better than this. And we are systematically destroying it because we want to eat a steak.
I used to eat meat. When I came to live here 3 years ago, I saw that essentially you have no harpy eagles anymore. And I immediately stopped it.
But meat production's impact on the natural world extends even further. Every year, we consume around 40 billion animals from factory farms, and they all need feeding. A third of the world's cropland is used to grow food not destined for humans, but for animals. Turning what was once wild land into massive monocultures, vast fields growing one single crop, is affecting the very foundation of life on Earth. Brazil is one of the world's largest suppliers of animal feed, and most of it is grown in the Cerrado region.
Brazil's Cerrado has been hailed as the biologically richest savanna region in the world, richer even than the savannas of Africa. But while a spotlight has been shone on the devastation taking place in the Amazon rainforest, the Cerrado has pretty much been overlooked. And because of the lure of monoculture farming, it's disappearing 4 times faster than the Amazon.
More than 40,000 square miles of the Cerrado have been cleared in the last decade. Most of it is now used to grow soybeans and corn for livestock around the world. An area of Cerrado bigger than London is used to grow soy that's exported to the UK, almost entirely to feed our farmed animals. Professor Ricardo Solar is studying how these monocultures are affecting insect life.
Ricardo, why insects? Why did you end up studying insects here?
If you think on the whole diversity that you can have in nature, insects make up more than 70% of the diversity. They are the gears that makes everything run here.
Insects play a crucial role in keeping our natural world healthy. They're essential for breaking down dead vegetation, aerating soil, dispersing seeds, and pollinating plants. A huge variety of species also need to eat insects to survive, from reptiles, fish, and birds to hundreds of species of mammals. Take out the insects, and every species above and below them in the food web will be affected. Ricardo has been monitoring how insect life in wild patches of the Cerrado compares to farmed areas by setting traps.
So here's the first trap.
Talk me through the setup of the trap. What's in the inside bit?
Well, that's the funniest part. One of the baits that we can use is poop, human poop.
Human poop?
Yeah,
Whose poop did you use?
well, mine, of course.
Stop it. Oh, Ricardo.
The thing is that it's hard to get wild poop.
That's
This is-
dedication to the cause right there.
Yeah.
Lured by Ricardo's homegrown bait, the insects fall into soapy water.
It's just impressive how diverse it is.
Look at
If
that.
you look, there are several dung beetles floating here.
Is that a spider down there? Look.
Yeah, there's a big spider there.
It's a cornucopia of insect life. There are so many different shapes, sizes, species.
They are bloody diverse.
Good scientific way of describing it. They're bloody diverse.
They are. And that's the thing. Even this tiny fly is very important for the ecosystem. And without all of this working, we would be screwed as a species.
To show me how monocultures covered in fertilizers and pesticides affect insects, Ricardo has set another trap, this time on the edge of a field growing corn for livestock.
Here is the same trap that we saw in the forest, same bait, everything is the same.
So it's just flies.
We have a great amount of animals if you count them, but all of the same kind.
Just 3 different types of fly. And we're not even in the very middle of a monoculture field. You know, we've got Cerrado trees right beside, and this is all we get.
That's exactly the thing. The diversity is completely vanished from this place.
So look, we need to grow food. We need to feed people.
We need to feed people, but the main problem here is having to spare such a big chunk of land just to feed cattle, pigs, and chicken.
40% of the world's crops are being fed to livestock rather than being used to feed humans. The trouble is, if we feed crops to animals, the meat we produce feeds fewer people than if we just ate the crops in the first place. If instead we used that land to grow a variety of crops for ourselves, we could feed far more people.
So instead of eating this corn directly, if we feed animals to then eat the animals, we need much more land to get the same amount of food. So it's an incredibly inefficient system.
It's a very inefficient system,
And this impacts not only here,
but everywhere, yeah.
the whole planet.
If you don't protect biodiversity, we will not be here anymore. And it's their problem, it's my problem, it's your problem, it's a planetary problem. So we are crossing all the boundaries that sustain life on Earth as we know it.
It makes me petrified and angry. You're a scientist, you're not doing this for dramatic effect. This is as serious as it can possibly get.
Yeah, this is very serious because I don't think we realize the size of the problem that we are creating for ourselves. This is what will kill us as a species in the planet.
Around the world, thousands of species are going extinct every single year. And many of those that remain are now threatened. About a third of biodiversity loss on our planet is caused by farming animals.
How many of us have ever really made the connection between the crop-fed meat on our plate and the destruction of some of the planet's most important biodiversity strongholds? I mean,
This is nothing short of catastrophic, and what frightens me the most is that a staggering number of species that have evolved over millions of years to do their job in keeping the planet and us alive are going extinct before even being discovered. And once they're gone forever. But intensively reared livestock aren't just fed crops grown on the land. We're also raiding the seas to feed them. I'm on my way to South Africa to see just how far-reaching the impact of our hunger for meat has become.
I've come to find out about an animal that's bearing the brunt of the meat industry's impact on the marine environment. So we've just left Cape Town behind us, and then over there is Robben Island, and that's where I'm heading.
Robben Island is best known for being Nelson Mandela's prison home during apartheid. But it's also home to some very precious birds, African penguins. In the wild, they can only be found in South Africa and Namibia. And today, they're endangered.
Hello,
Hi.
nice to meet you. How are you?
We're just gonna go to the other side of the bush.
I've joined Dr. Kasa Ludinya and Andile Mdaluli. They work for SANCOB, a conservation organization that rescues coastal birds.
I mean, I have to admit, I'm walking around here expecting a penguin colony, right? Lots of penguins, but they are very, very scarce. It's actually a little bit like a treasure hunt to find them. 20 years ago, South Africa still had 50,000 breeding pairs, but now currently we have 15,000 and the numbers continue to decline. That's astonishing. There's basically no sardine out in the ocean for the birds to eat.
Sardines and anchovies are the main prey of the African penguin, but there are barely any left here. They're being caught and ground down into a protein-rich powder called fish meal. Around the world, almost 4 million tons of fish are turned into fish meal to feed livestock every year. In the UK, it's fed to some of our pigs and chickens. With so few fish left, around 1,000 starving penguins are brought to SANCOB's bird sanctuary each year.
This is Smirin. He's got a little fluffy torch company.
I'm meeting the youngest residents who were abandoned by their parents before they'd even hatched.
How old is this little guy?
I think he's about almost 3 weeks old.
How is it that a penguin chick call breaks my heart? I don't have this reaction with human babies, you know. It's only animal chicks. How many eggs are you having to take in from the wild these days? 50 eggs in a season. So a little bit of formula and then some actual bits of fish.
This is sardines.
So the very fish that is drastically depleted in the wild, that they simply can't get enough of to feed their chicks. It really is quite moving to just see this little tiny vulnerable individual, and you're doing everything you can to give it a fighting chance, and yet when you release this little guy, there's still not enough food out there for them.
Yeah, so that is one of the big problems that we obviously have to deal with. Once we let them go, they basically go into an environment that we know doesn't have enough fish to sustain the population.
But what's the reality for these African penguins?
We don't change anything dramatically, the species will be extinct or can go extinct in the next 15, 25 years.
Gone. Every single individual gone, disappeared off the planet. All of the sardines off this coastline used for fish meal. We're taking the food of an animal that's literally facing extinction to feed to another animal so that we can eat that animal. It doesn't make any sense.
The impact that our demand for meat has on our planet and its wildlife is truly staggering. To make matters worse, in 30 years' time, there will be 2 billion more humans to feed. And as people in the developing world earn more and livelihoods improve, they'll want to eat more meat. By 2050, demand for meat around the world is expected to rise by over 40%. than our planet can sustain.
Unless we do things very differently, the impact the meat industry has on our environment is only going to get worse. As demand increases, so do greenhouse gas emissions, so does pollution, so does the destruction of biodiversity, which leads to one very obvious question: should we just stop eating meat?
I'm in Texas. Summer is on the way and barbecue season is in full swing.
Hi. Hi. Sarah. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
How are you? Thanks for taking the time to meet me. I know
You
you're
bet.
very busy. Shall we have a little walk around?
Absolutely.
I've met up with Dr. Sarah Place, a scientist who works for the National Cattlemen's Beef Association. I want to know if someone from the industry thinks it's time to cut down on meat production.
So a lot of leading scientists are saying if we reduced our meat consumption drastically, we would use less land, we would use less water, there would be less pollution, the planet would be healthier.
Human beings want to eat animal source foods. We have a growing population. These things are true. As people get more income, they will consume more animal source foods. And I know there's so much noise about this dietary change topic, but trying to change the individual behavior of millions or billions of people, I see zero evidence that any of that is going to happen.
But considering what we are facing regarding our environment, surely something fundamental has to
With
happen.
respect, I reject the way you frame the whole thing. I don't want to live in a world where we dictate what people eat, right? We have to have freedom in my opinion.
Regardless
We are
of
an
what's
American,
happening
we're
to
in
our
Texas.
environment, regardless of what's happening to our environment,
Yes,
we
because-
as experts cannot dictate what we might be able to do somewhat better in order not to face a climate
Again, because
catastrophe.
I reject the premise. Those predictions of future catastrophe almost always discount human ingenuity to get better. And I'm a big believer in people and that we can get better.
So are you basically saying that science and technology is what's going to get us out of a potential environmental crisis when it comes to livestock production?
I'm offering you a vision that is not saying status quo is perfect, but also I'm rejecting the very negative worldview that we can't get better. We've made a lot of progress. We can continue to make progress, right? It's about applying science. As a scientist, I had to be positive on that, right? That we can do.
The industry also argues that the economic impact of a world without meat would be colossal, that millions of people would lose their jobs. And in many parts of the world where food is limited, meat can be a vital source of nutrients. But considering what I've learned, it's clear that something has to change.
I've been left frustrated by that conversation, you know. Honestly, I think what I was hoping for was an acknowledgement that the industry had to at least reduce production. And then you walk around here and you quickly realize that a lot of people simply wouldn't dream of giving up meat. So now what's the answer?
Scientists are striving for solutions, and many are focusing on how to reduce the vast volumes of methane produced by cows.
Basically looks like a dairy farm right in the middle of a uni campus.
I've come to the University of California in Davis, home to one of the leading animal science departments in the world.
Ed? Hi.
Hello.
How are you?
Professor Ed De Peters is researching how a cow's diet can affect methane emissions. And to do that, he studies a cow called Daffodil, who has a hole in her stomach.
It looks very odd.
So you can see the plastic material closes the opening to the stomach compartment.
It is kind of freaky to me, Ed. So tell me why it's necessary to do this.
To get a sample, we would have to use a stomach tube. And a stomach tube, in my view, is more traumatic to the animal if I've got to pass that down her esophagus to get a sample. And she really doesn't realize it's almost there. And so we can sample frequently and we can study digestion.
I'm hearing interesting noises. I'm also definitely getting a whiff of a very new smell.
It's not methane. You can't smell methane.
Right.
So you're not smelling methane. You're smelling volatile fatty acids. That's
I've
what
just
you're
smelled
smelling.
a volatile fatty acid.
Yeah.
I never thought I'd say that in my lifetime.
I take the plug out. She's going through lots of contractions, mixing all the feed that she's eating.
Ed feeds Daffodil different grains and fruits to see how they affect her and what difference they might make to the methane she produces. To ensure this diet isn't causing her digestive problems, he needs regular samples of her stomach juices.
Oh, very compact.
Oh, it's very dense.
Are you okay?
It's
Is she
very
okay?
dense.
Ooh, bit of
You have the
gas
contractions?
escaped.
Feel the contractions.
This is the Ed. I have carried out post-mortems. This is a living, breathing animal that I'm looking straight into. Wowzers.
Perfect.
That's crazy stuff.
The little beaker. It's gonna
Will
eat
she
and
make
it up.
more of this?
Yes.
More out of this when
Yeah.
I put it back?
The research taking place here is leading to some remarkable results. Adding a small amount of seaweed to a cow's diet seems to be reducing methane emissions by 60%. This could have huge potential, but it's not yet clear what impact industrial-scale harvesting of seaweed could have on the oceans. And some experts believe that to solve the environmental challenges caused by meat, we need a total transformation in the way it's produced. I've come to San Francisco. Scientists here are working on a solution they believe might change everything. And they're not based at universities, they're working for tech companies.
Doesn't get much more urban than this, does it? Not an animal in sight, far less anything to do with farming, but in the future, most of our meat could come from a place like this. Vitor.
Hey.
Hi, Liz.
Nice to
Thanks
meet you.
for seeing me today.
Welcome to Just.
Vitor Santo works for Just, a company that's growing meat in a lab. The principle is that because the only thing you're growing is meat, not the whole animal and all its organs and bones, the process requires fewer resources. The industry is potentially worth millions, so company secrets are closely guarded.
From this part on, we cannot record. I'm just going to show you the last stage of the lab.
All
because it's-
classified?
Yeah.
Makes it sound very James Bond. Okay, so how many animals need to be killed to make, I don't know, a certain number of steaks in the lab?
None. That's the beauty of the process. No need to sacrifice the animal, so that's one of the biggest advantages of this.
Instead, the company took some cells from a chicken feather. The cells are fed nutrients in a liquid solution so that they can develop and multiply into muscle fibers, in other words, meat.
Once these have grown to be ready to cook, what do they look like?
So they look like ground chicken meat. This is frozen, so it has the same sort of color. It's pale, white, yellow.
But for me, I'm concerned about what you have to add to cells in a clinical, in a lab setting, and what that might be doing to me as someone who's eating that meat. That's the bit I'm wary of, and I'm sure I'm not alone.
About the nutrition that we give the cells, it's not different than the feed that we provide to the animals in terms of calories, proteins, and all that. The only thing that changes is the process. Instead of growing in an animal, they're growing in an incubator, in a tank.
So where are we going now?
We're going to the kitchen, to the best part.
Lab-grown meat can't be produced cheaply enough yet for us to buy.
Tony's been here.
Yeah, that's true. A while ago.
But in the test kitchen, Josh Hyman is trying to turn cultured chicken into something with mass appeal. Nuggets.
So we're just heating up our oil and ready to drop our little chicken nugget in.
Okay. Can you just show me what it looks like before you cook it?
Of course.
Is this the same stuff as in the frozen packet you showed me? And then breaded?
Yes.
Little breadcrumbs?
Yes.
And what else?
So if we had a label on this today, the #1 ingredient would be cultured chicken.
Am I seeing paprika here?
A little bit.
I like paprika.
Ultimately, we want this to taste good.
I still am not convinced that the die-hard meat eaters that love a good old Texan barbecue are going to buy this in the supermarket instead.
But if I could make it taste just as good.
it's not even about the taste. I feel that like,
That's where
you
you
know
start.
the way people don't like change. It's like, I've been doing this all my life and I want my meat to come from a living cow, even
By the
though I
time this
don't.
is ready, those people won't be around anymore.
Yeah.
You'll have this new group of people who are looking for some food that's more sustainable, that's made in a better way.
As much as I love everything that you're doing here, I just don't want to eat it.
Come on, join an exclusive club. For now.
You're good. Go on then. How can you argue with that?
I know.
Is this why you put in front of house?
Pretty much. Among other things, but yeah.
Smear of sauce.
Yeah.
It's all in the presentation, Josh, isn't it? It looks like chicken nugget and it smells like chicken nugget.
And the taste?
I wouldn't know the difference. Have I just tasted the future, lads?
Yeah.
The future is now.
This technology is promising enough that some of the biggest meat companies in the world are now investing in cultured meat.
It's pretty incredible that we've reached a stage where we can produce meat in a petri dish. And maybe this could be the solution to our meat problems in the future. But frankly, we just don't know how scaling this up could impact the planet. And you know what? I would just love it if instead of manipulating and changing nature, if just for once we stepped back and took a fundamentally different approach to how we solve the environmental problems we've caused.
Some farmers around the world are rearing livestock in a way that takes better care of the planet, using farming methods that support soil health without the need for chemical fertilizers and pesticides. Rearing fewer animals that don't overgraze, allowing the land to recover. And managing a variety of animals in order to protect the planet's biodiversity. But the solution also lies with how much we consume. The latest research says that to meaningfully reduce the impact of meat production, we need to cut down to a few hundred grams a week, just 1 or 2 portions. So how do we change our meat-eating habits? I'm in Wales to meet a farmer who believes the key lies in the relationship we have with the meat we eat.
Hi there.
Hi, Liz.
Matthew. Nice to meet you finally. How you doing?
Nice to meet you. Yeah,
This
very
is
good.
great.
Thank you.
What a setup. So you're going to show me the animals you keep here?
Of course. Let's go around and see the chickens.
Great.
We're going to head
Thanks.
this way.
Matthew Watkinson set up this small farm in Pembrokeshire with his family because he wanted to produce food in a different way.
There's 50 chickens in here, so we're only a little flock. You coming out, guys?
Hello. He used to work as a vet on large livestock farms, and he didn't like what he saw.
I wanted farming to be different. Rather than 32,000 or whatever it is in chickens in one shed, we're going for 50. We're trying to get away from what I would call force farming, trying to push things beyond what they're naturally capable of.
Matthew believes that if people truly connected with the fact that meat doesn't just come from a supermarket, but from a living, breathing animal, the change could be dramatic. He and his family know all the costs of rearing the animals they eat, because they're responsible for every stage of their lives, what the chickens eat, how they're kept, and how they die. Matthew only slaughters chickens at the end of their egg-laying lives, in what he believes is the most ethical way.
There we go.
Are you going to do it now, straight away? In front of, like, I just want to be warned a little bit. I'm okay with this. I respect the way you approach all this, but I just want to kind of get a bit of an idea of it. Is it just going to happen straight away?
We'll stun her, and then I'll immediately break her neck and sever the spinal cord, and she will not know anything about it.
Do you always find this a bit difficult?
Yeah, I'm nervous. I'm breathing hard. This is, I don't think we should ever get used to it because I don't want it to be an easy process. If it was too easy, then you stop respecting it. And that's it.
Done.
Around the world, every single second, 2,000 chickens are killed. And yet, most of us will never witness this ourselves. It's a profound reminder of what it takes to produce our meat.
Because we have done this, and because we've connected with the process in this way, we eat less meat.
That is what lies at the heart of the problem for me, having seen what I've seen, is this complete disconnect with the process that goes into putting this chicken on your plate.
Meat is a packaged product rather than an animal that had to be killed by someone for you to eat.
Yeah.
The chicken?
Oh, what did you put in there? What herbs and...
Lemon balm, sage.
Clearly, it isn't possible for most of us to rear and kill our own animals.
The chicken is going to be very nice.
Is it going to be very nice?
But if we are going to keep eating meat, perhaps by reconnecting with what it takes to put it on our plates, we might eat less of it. Whatever your personal views about eating meat, I really respect what Matthew and his family are doing here. Industrial production of meat has turned animals into just another commodity on our supermarket shelves. And along the way, we've completely lost sight of the real costs associated with that. Meat production is taking its toll on our wildlife and our environment. Modern farming makes so much of it so cheaply that we're now eating more than the natural world can sustain. But we can all play a part in turning this around. We can safeguard the future of our planet and indeed, our future. I think it's safe to say that I have been shell-shocked by everything I've seen. The impact that meat production has on our environment is simply staggering and much more far-reaching than I imagined. From a personal standpoint, I'm eating even less meat and I've given up red meat altogether. And that's the thing. Amidst all the bad news about the damage that our modern world is causing to our planet, this is one problem we can all do something about. We can each decide what kind of relationship we want to have with the natural world. Every day, with every meal, we can choose where our meat comes from, how much of it to eat, and even whether to eat it at all.